All right, into chapter 6 today, which is on training and kind of what the franchisor does for you. Franchise assistance and support. 4 types of support: training, ongoing support, real estate, and financing. All right, so pre-opening training. This, to me, was one of the most valuable things they did. Anytime you open a business, your first impression is going to go a long way with customers. If you come out of the gates and do it right, you got a better chance of having repeat business. I know the McDonald's across the street from me, when they opened, I just sat there and watched it, just laughing because their drive-through line was backed up. They couldn't get orders right, and this was from a guy. The franchisee had 2 or 3 other stores, so it was kind of amazing that they bungled the opening so bad. But when people have a bad experience early on, that kind of resonates with them. So pre-opening is very, very important that you come out of the gates and do it right. Marginal benefits, marginal cost. You got to consider 3 things. What industry is it? How complex is the product? When you think about it, hamburgers is not a very complex product, but you guys do fast food. Do they mess it up sometimes? Especially if you do a special order. And then the learning curve. How long is it going to take? How long out do we need to start our training? All right, so location of training. Headquarters, at the franchise location, or both. I had to do training personally at headquarters before I got into the business, but in my business, when we opened up, I had a staff of people from headquarters actually come into my restaurant, and we actually cooked food, went through all kinds of training. I mean, it's hard to train unless you actually do it. So think about the dollars I spent. And here's one of the things I did, and this was probably my best marketing tool. When they told me, and I didn't think through all this stuff, but okay, all of a sudden we're cooking all this food, and people are coming through the drive-through, my employees, making orders, we're handing the food out, taking it, setting it in a trash can. So what would you do under that situation? Give it out. And that was I started just having the people take it to businesses they know, take it to their family, whoever was working. So we absolutely saturated a town of 6,000. It's not that big, and I'm cooking the food anyway. We absolutely got a lot of good publicity by taking food out that we were going to have to throw away anyway. So that was one of the things that I did for pre-opening and marketing, and I don't know if other people did it or not, but I couldn't stomach just throwing food away. All right, learn by doing, and you think about pouring an ice cream cone is really easy, right? But some people are better than others, and it takes training. And also there's ways to do it right. You guys ever do the cruise ship where they have the ice cream thing? You're not supposed to put it down in the cone. It increases your food cost. You're supposed to start at the top of the cone and make it around so that it goes up. I mean, little things like that. If you put it down in the cone and mash it down, you're putting a lot more product in it than you would if you just swirl it around the top. So that's what they teach you. Okay, is there book learning? If you're in computer business or technology business, you may be required to actually do study and take tests. And then pre-opening, we had quite a few people, and they even involved some other franchisees and got them to come down and help for the opening. Because you're opening, especially in something like a restaurant in a small town, it's a big deal. All right, don't worry about that. Okay, so ongoing field training. We had what was called my field service rep that came around, and so when we rolled out a new product, he would come around and show us how to do that. Any kind of changes that were instituted, and just periodically would come in and check on us, make sure, see if we had any questions. And it's costly, and one of the things, and go back to economies of scale, the more units the franchise has, the less cost it takes for that person because you have more people contributing to that salary. So if you have one guy looking after 6 stores, it's pretty expensive. If you have one person that does 12 to 15, you can offset your cost a whole lot easier. All right, so overall lessons, it requires a firm to develop a plan for training, the amount, the form, timing, and actually the people, who's going to carry it out. You need to examine the cost and benefits of training to figure out the optimal amount of training to provide franchisees. You want them to be helpful, but you can't spend a whole lot of money. The good thing I would do, too, is involve the franchise community. Those guys were very helpful, and then I would go help them, And then the beauty of it is after your first, the second, third, and fourth are a lot easy, and you really don't need the corporation as much because I was able to hire my people and have them trained. I actually hired people and had them work at my store that was already open. So when we opened up the second store, I had people that had already worked. And that was a big bonus to have experienced people coming out of the gate. All right, so field operations, centralized service, and communications. So under field ops, they come in and audit to see if there's problems. And I know Mr. Holmes, the guy from Firehouse, he says if the owners want, he will actually go through their books with them. Some don't want him to do it. I mean, he has a right to inspect the books because he is actually a representative of the franchisor. But he said, I'm happy to go down and tell them, hey, your food cost is a little high. Your labor cost is high, because he has that knowledge. So they will do that for you. Once again, it's costly if you're paying for that person, and economies of scale as you grow, it offsets the cost and makes it a lot more cost efficient. All right, centralized services. Big thing is purchasing. When these oil change places, and you think I know some of them do it for $19.95, you can't go to Walmart and when you buy oil, filter, and everything, it's real close to that. So how are they making any money at all? Yeah, I know. Well, besides selling you other services, that Tires Plus place is the worst. I've never gone there, and I don't go there anymore because I got tired of him telling me 5 things that needed to be done. I just wanted my oil changed. And so the line is, I'll tell my mechanic, thank you for pointing that out to me. They buy it bulk, and you're buying it in a container. They're buying it in a drum, so their cost for that is considerably less than what you're paying and the volume that they buy. So that, to me, once again, probably the biggest thing you get from that franchise as they grow is that buying power.
Do they just refill the cans? Because I always go to like Jiffy Lube, they only have like 10 oil little things up there. So do they just fill it?
I thought in my understanding, you have to pay a little extra. If you get it out of the bottle, you have to pay extra. The bulk oil, they have just the drum that comes out of the drum.
Yes, they try to sell you like higher quality oil.
Right. If you want the synthetic or something like that, then that comes out. Well, then do it yourself. Hey, I still do some of mine myself. Well, then you need a bigger car. All right. Communication. You have a direct line generally to headquarters, toll-free numbers, and that was a good thing. The biggest, probably, the most help I got was from the HR guy. And that HR is so tedious now of what you have to do, the processes, the paperwork you have to fill out to make sure you're in compliance. So it was nice having somebody who was an expert in HR. You guys, are you guys mostly management majors or what? Management, finance? Do you guys take an HR class? No? I would recommend knowing something about HR, especially if you're going to own your own business. It is absolutely, there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of detail that you have to go through that you don't want to mess up and be wrong on. So it's a critical part of a business. National and regional meetings. To me, that was the best thing that they did for me was set up regional meetings. We used to have a franchise meeting at least once every probably 6 months or a year where we would go to, I know we went to Lake of the Ozarks one time, we went to New Orleans one time, it was like a convention, and they would bring in all our vendors, so we got a lot of nice giveaway stuff, but it allowed me to talk to other franchisees. The corporation can tell you stuff that helps you, but when you sit down and talk to people who are actually in the business and have been in the business for years, that was a lot of value to me. And one of the things, probably the biggest problem that I had juggling was we were a business in a small town. You had people needing money, sports teams needing money, the cheerleaders need money, the band needs money. And so how do you regulate? I mean, it's like an unending line of people coming in needing sponsorship and money. So, how do you do that? Well, the guy from Missouri that was at the franchise meeting said, here's what I do. I give out a card that has some discounts on it. They sell the card, so they make money on that, and then I get business by doing it. So it's a win-win. So instead of just giving away money, then you're actually getting something in exchange. And that's what I ended up doing for a lot of people, was doing that little card. Or now they have share nights where if you go in and say you're with so-and-so, they'll donate part of the profit. Well, at least you're making some money on that. It's not like you're just doing a donation, like writing that check for the ad in the yearbook. That's just, you're not getting a whole lot for your money in that type of advertising. So those regional meetings to me were invaluable. Plus in selling your business, the easiest way to sell a franchise is to another franchisee. So it basically exposes you to a market of people. If you wanted to buy your business, or if you wanted to grow your business, then you're in touch with people who are doing the same thing. Newsletters, we used to get a newsletter, and not just about Hardee's specific, but we also used to get an industry newsletter, which was pretty enlightening at times too. And now think about it. What's the cost of a newsletter today? Nothing. The cost of whoever writes it up and you email it out. So it used to be everything had to be printed, and that's a pretty substantial cost. Now with technology and email, all you have to do is, can't scan it and email it, but you can just type it. All right, so franchisors provide value to franchisees through field ops, centralized service, communications, and small young systems. You can't promise too much up front just because of the cost it is to you to pay for that. All right, real estate, site selection assistance. And one of the things that Hardee's did for me, and once again, all this, I was new to this business, but what do you think's one of the most, I know you guys have heard location, 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 but think about the fast food business. When you talk about a location, what do you think's important to a location for fast food? What's that?
Right next to the highway.
Okay. What about in a town, though? Because here's the thing about a highway. If you're banking doing your business off a highway, what if people aren't stopping at that exit? There's a lot of risk involved with going out to a highway.
Government buildings, stuff.
Okay, yeah, you want to be through an area where traffic. Could you guys go out of your way for fast food?
Chick-fil-A.
To Chick-fil-A, okay. It's called a destination point. Walmart's a destination point. For the most part, fast food is a convenience point. You pick the one that's on your way to something. But have you ever heard the term ingress and regress? No? That means how easy can I get out of the place and how hard is it? How easy is it to get in? How hard is it to get out? If you're on the side of a divided highway, and like I know Thomasville Road's 4-lane and all, if you want that McDonald's, then you've got to go down and U-turn and come around and come back to get it. The Wendy's is right over here. It's much easier just to go on your way. So one of the things that they will help you with is traffic patterns. There's a lady that helped me, actually got up at 5 in the morning, went down and spent a couple of days at different places looking at traffic patterns in the morning to find out where traffic was going. The beauty of a small town, though, is we were not out of the way anywhere, and there's no perfect location in a small town because I figured school traffic would be good, but then you want downtown because that's your lunch business. So really, we couldn't have gone wrong, I don't think, but they can help you with that. Now, she was very careful not to say, you need to put it here. Okay, why would they not do that? Yeah, what happens if it doesn't work? And they've been sued, and that's why they're very careful not to say that. They suggest that this area might be good. Okay? And you also, if you can, you want a corner, right? Think about it. Why? I mean, where the gas stations generally have the best locations? Why? Because, well, visual, and you can get people go in and out from two different directions if you're on a corner. And so one of the things, the lot I bought, this was a pretty good intersection here. This was a pretty busy street, and this was a pretty busy street. There was a little old gas station right here on the corner. Okay, the lot that was for sale that I was trying to buy was right here, and I had to buy this big piece behind it to have enough room to do what I needed to do. This guy tried to absolutely hold me up for what he wanted for this. He wanted more for this than I paid for this and this together, because he thought I had to have that corner, and he thought he had me. So what I ended up doing, there was a bank right here. The bank was very smart. I needed to move that way just a little bit. So the bank, the property line actually looked like this. So the bank gave me this much property, moved their fence over, and in turn for me doing business with them, I promised them all my business. Okay, they weren't using the property, so very smart. So then I was able to tell this guy, no thanks, don't need it. And we still had an out over here. Plus, I had a lot of logging business, so I had a big truck parking lot over here that we were able to use too. So we actually came out very, very good. But I love not having to do business with that guy, because he thought I needed and wanted to be on that corner, and we did. Ideally, I would have loved to be on that corner. But one of the things I also, things just work out for a reason. Had I bought that gas station, the EPA had just come along and changed the law. What do you have to do now if you buy a place where a gas station is? You have to dig up all the tanks and then have the soil tested. And if there's any kind of contamination, you have to take that soil out, bring new soil in, and it is expensive to do that if you have any kind of problem at all. So that's why you may see some really good locations with gas stations sitting vacant, is because what you have to do now to convert, what's that?
Tennessee Street, between Tennessee and Ocala.
Oh, that's that old Hoggly Woggly place or whatever? Yeah. Are they? Yeah. It's just what you have to do. But think about the commitment, the monetary commitment, and all of a sudden your overhead goes way up. So I hope there wasn't one of those tanks on my property. I don't know how far back they went, but anyway, we stayed away from that. So site development, they can help you, and the big thing is the knowledge of where you want to be. You guys know how to get traffic counts? Do you know you can do that? Well, you can contact the state highway department and give them like an intersection, and they can pretty much give you a time, and that's what we did, and they can give you for each hour what's the traffic count at a specific location. So that's available to you. You just got to contact the state highway department, and generally they have those figures.
Why did they do that, Jeff? Just for their own purpose?
They do it for their own purpose, because like when we came in, this street, and different states operate different ways. In Arkansas, you had 5 men that were called highway commissioners, and they were appointed. It was a very prestigious job, and so they kind of controlled where roads were going to be. So when I bought, the other thing to make sure you do in real estate is you check with the highway department and find out what plans they have to add roads. Because, and I can give you 2 reasons why. One, this road in front of my store was slated to be to go to 4-lane or 5-lane, whatever. So I had to set my building back further than I normally would have, just in case they decided to go ahead with that plan, because then you don't want to put a building where you can't move the building. So you want to plan for that. Number 2, the guy in Pine Bluff, which was a buddy of mine, they built a bypass around that city. And it used to be if you were coming from South Arkansas going to Little Rock, which is a lot of traffic, you went right by his store. When they built that bypass, crushed his business. So you gotta plan for growth, and the highway department is the one that controls where the roads. So why are they measuring traffic counts? See where there's a lot of traffic and where roads need to be built. So that's valuable information. And I got caught in my 3rd store with an eminent domain situation. You guys know that term? They had to improve, and so they pay you based on, they'll do a survey of real estate, okay? So they paid me based on the average cost of real estate in Dumas, Arkansas, but not the average cost of commercial real estate, which mine was. And I asked the highway commissioner, because he was a buddy of mine, said, can I fight it? He said, you can, but you'll lose. Because the government, they're the final arbitrator. Yeah, no, how many of them are successful? It's kind of one of those rigged deals. The bigger inconvenience, though, was while all that construction is going on, it hinders people getting in and out of your business for a while too. So it's stuff like that, and you can't help it. There's progress, and certainly roads are going to be built. But if you know about that in advance, you need to find out as much information as you can, because that can really hurt your business.
Don't they keep paying you in a situation?
No, one-time deal. They buy your land is what they do. And they have the right, you guys know that term, right? Eminent domain, which means they can come in and the government for common good, they can't take it, but they have to pay market value. But in my opinion, we should have been, what I thought was fair was how much I paid for that location and then take the percentage of that they were taking from me. Okay, they didn't do that. They did on a cost per acre and percentage of an acre for that town, which was very, very minimal. I mean, I bought a house in that town for $29,000, 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, for employees to live in. There were no apartments. So real estate was not very expensive. Okay.
Isn't it just basically taking it from you? Because if they offer you the money, you still don't want it. They still get your property.
They have the right to, you have to, so your option is to take it or not take it. I was able to negotiate for them to pay to move my sign, because it had to be backed up also. But once again, when you're dealing with the government, yeah, you're on really the wrong end. Okay, might actually own the land and lease it. You guys know which major franchisor owns all their land and leases it? McDonald's. McDonald's is as much a real estate company as they are a hamburger chain. And that's why they are in the best locations, because they don't care how much they pay. Me going in, I'm trying to minimize. They go in and buy the best location, and then they charge the franchisee. It's between, I want to say, the last I knew, 10 to 12% rent each month. So when you buy McDonald's, you don't actually own the land. You still have to you own the building and the equipment inside of it, and you pay a brick and mortar charge, so it's probably not as expensive startup because they buy the land. But then, like with me, when I sold mine, I was able to sell my real estate with it. They own the land, and you pay them rent each month.
Wasn't Chick-fil-A like that? Didn't you say Chick-fil-A was something?
Yeah, but you don't actually pay them rent. But yes, the beauty of Chick-fil-A, you don't pay anything. They buy the equipment, everything. Right? You're not. That's why it's technically not a franchise. Okay, so don't do Chick-fil-A as your franchise. They are not a franchise. It's a license agreement between, like, it's an employment agreement where you're licensed to run their business, but they own the whole business. So you're just basically a manager, but a very highly incentivized. Right. So you don't actually own it. Okay, and small, young change, let franchisees pick their own locations. And that's the other thing the book kind of mentioned too. And I was new to that town, so I really didn't know the town. But if you're going to a place where somebody has lived there for a long time, there's a good chance they may know that town and locations better than you do. But I think I mentioned this. I actually got into a pretty big fight with Hardee's about going to Monticello because I wanted to be in front of Walmart because Walmart had already moved. And the thing about Walmart, if they've got a super center, chances are they're there for good. But in 20 years ago, what was happening, Walmart would lease their buildings also. They would not own them. They would have somebody build the building, and then they would lease it. And then when that lease was up, if they did not have a super center and there was not room to add it, they would just up and move. And so McDonald's was sitting right in front of Walmart, the old Walmart. Taco Bell's right across the street. Burger King's right across the street. Walmart had moved down across the intersection. So I wanted to go with Walmart. Hardee's wanted me to go back where all the other fast food places. And I ended up basically having to threaten them and tell them, I'll sell some other kind of hamburgers here. I'm buying this location. And so finally they acquiesced. And I think I mentioned you, McDonald's is now in the parking lot of the new Walmart. Right? And so Walmart, what did they do? They sold some land, made some money. Walmart's a money-making company. Okay, so when you're young, be careful. You may not have the ability to hire somebody to do real estate services. All right, so McDonald's. Site selection is separate from the franchisee selection. They have a corporate people that go in and do the site selection. They make the decision to develop a location, and then they manage all the site evaluation, acquire the property, construct a building, and then after making the decision to develop a site, they award it to the franchisee. So in my case, I got the franchise first and then picked the location. McDonald's case, they already have the location picked out, then they find the franchisee because they do all the construction. But once again, they have this revenue stream now, and think about 12% of sales. Average McDonald's does over $2 million in business. That's a pretty good, they'll pay for that building in probably 5 to 7 years.
It's not like a regular day telling you these goes up and down. And then they get their royalty and the franchise.
And then pay your advertising. So McDonald's, you're probably looking at close to 20% right off the top. And yet they're still making money.
So let's say McDonald's that opened is doing a lot of business and they decide to add a second drive-through window. Would that then be paid for by the franchisor, or would the franchisee have to pay for that additional?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know with any equipment, the franchisee has to buy that. As far as that, I don't know if that would be considered part of the building or part of the equipment. Okay, and it may be a split cost. The franchisee may have to buy the extra speaker and all that stuff, and then the construction costs may be paid for by the company. I don't know. But once again, those are good questions to ask if you're going to get into that business. But you know what the bottom line is? If you get a McDonald's, you think there's any doubt you're not going to make money? No. And I had a last class, one of my students interviewed a McDonald's franchisee. He did say it is not near as much fun as it was many years ago. Because he said there's so much pressure from McDonald's corporate for that stock price that they're, and what's the only way they can grow their business? You know, squeeze the franchisees. Because expansion-wise, where can McDonald's expand to now that they're not already? I mean, where have you been that there's not one that you think they need one?
I went to McDonald's in Amsterdam.
There's one, the best McDonald's I'd ever seen was in Antigua, Guatemala. Had an outdoor cafe like a Starbucks, had an indoor place like a Starbucks, had a huge playground, and then had a regular McDonald's. And that was all one building. What's that?
There's a McDonald's by Disney World, which has like the phone set food, almost arcade and it's like 2
What did the guy say? The one in Manhattan, was it, or downtown?
Free within like 3 blocks.
Right. So, yeah, McDonald's, as far as growth, are they taking new franchisees? Rarely. And they don't need to. Because, and I know a guy, I do know one, I haven't talked to him in a while, but they really, once they get one person, they encourage them to take more stores. Because it's less work on the franchisor going and identifying new people. But, in my mind, it kind of defeats the purpose of the franchise, which is having an owner in every store. Because once you get, like the same thing here, they got 12, you're going to have managers running those stores. And it's just not, well, but they've got a system, and they do, you know, Casper evidently hires good people, because when they were here, it was the best run these McDonald's ever were. All right, so Hilton, if you did Hilton Hotel, you get a developer assigned to you, you get the UFOC, or now it's the FDD franchise sales kit, and he works with you on your market, you sign and date it, and once again, there was, what did he say, a 14-day waiting period between the time you sign that receipt and you could actually sign the license agreement, and then they kind of go through the steps. And my father, late in his career, after he did the bank, built a Super 8 motel, and it was the same thing. He had a guy that worked with him on the land, location, and those people are good because they do it for a living. And that motels, now, it was on a highway, because that's more of your traffic pattern you want to be on a highway if you're a motel. All right, lease negotiation assistance, they can help you with rates, although I don't know that they can help you too much. And especially, you think when Chick-fil-A comes in to buy something, would you tell somebody you were Chick-fil-A if you were them? Why not? Price is going to go up. When I sold my third restaurant, I had a broker contact me and inquire, and we were kind of working through to see if we could work a deal. She never told me who her client was. And that was kind of a giveaway that it was some kind of major. And after the deal fell through and she said they just can't make it work, I said, well, can you tell me now who it was? She said, yeah, when. Okay. She did not disclose that to me, because if you find out you're selling to Chick-fil-A, you think your price, or Walmart, like that Walmart out in North Tallahassee, whoever owned that land, if they found out it was Walmart, and in some cases they may not be able to hide it, but I would always try to, if I were doing that, I would try to buy under some other name or name of some corporation, because you find out it's Walmart coming in, you know they got deep pockets. And if they want to be there, they'll get there. All right, you might want to be the landlord, but once again, McDonald's is kind of rare. The book says that like 25% of people do that. What's the whole benefit of franchising? Yeah, you're letting other people spend their money to grow the business. So if you're actually buying the land, you're actually putting yourself at risk. Although if you want to own something, the land's what you want to own. Restaurant equipment used is not worth anything. That land, especially if it's a good location, I had the guy that bought me out that closed both stores. He had no problem selling those buildings. And the Wendy's down here that closed, I think the place has already closed down again. That was it like a apartment finder or something? But yeah, that place, somebody will buy that at some point because that building is going to have value. Yeah.
I think that your opinion on that changes as a franchisor if you're publicly traded or not?
Yeah, if you can raise the money, if you're going to go publicly traded and you have capital sitting, then you have to make a decision. What's the best investment of my capital? If it's to buy land and you can, making 12% from that franchisee is better than you can invest that money if you have cash setting, absolutely, I think that's a good deal. Absolutely, and that's probably what McDonald's, when they got to that point,
Probably make money back 12% of typically.
Well, the land and the building.
Oh, they own the building too?
They build the building is what that slide said, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I thought they ended up making you pay.
You pay like a brick and mortar charge, but I don't think you pay for the whole thing. You kind of help them, but you do pay for the equipment. But there's a lot of expense. It probably cost me, and this was years ago, $100,000 just to do site work and curbs and gutters, asphalt the driveway and all that. So that's a huge expense. Equipment is very, very expensive, I'm sure, and you're paying a charge on that. So, I don't know what one would sell for, and maybe it's just because of the value of, and how much you're going to make back. Okay, the other thing that I would suggest, though, is find there's a business called commercial real estate. Find a commercial real estate guy. Right now, I know I've got a good friend in commercial real estate. I could call him. He can tell me what the average square foot for lease in a shopping center in Tallahassee and on each area of town would be. So find out, and then you got to deal with the build out. If you've never done all that, then chances are those people will have somebody that might be able to help through that process. But the bottom line is, Hardee's had a deal where they would actually build your restaurant and do all this stuff for you. And I asked them how many entrepreneurs or how many people ever did that. They said none. Why? Because I'm not going to give them a blank check to go do that. I'm going to be involved in every part of that process, negotiating deals instead of just hiring them to do it. And most people I know aren't going to turn that over to somebody else because they're not going to care how much it costs. They're spending your money. All right, so don't ignore the site selection and lease negotiation assistance to help control your franchisees, and don't provide it when you first establish, because once again, you're going to have to hire a person that's a real estate person. But if you get to a certain size, you can afford to do that. Okay, financing, direct assistance, loan to franchisees. That says only about 1/3 of franchisors do this. I don't know of that many. Once again, why would they want to loan money to the franchisee? What's their incentive? I mean, make interest, but what's the whole reason of franchising? To put the risk. So what happens now if that place goes belly up? You have risk involved. So I don't know any franchises that actually loan money. If they're going to do that, you're better off doing the McDonald's thing, buying the building and charging them rent, because you don't want to be in. They're not in the banking business. Here's what they do for you. It's called indirect assistance. They, at all those conventions, Hardee's would have all these lenders available to us that would loan franchisees money much more readily than other companies because of the success rate of the franchise community. Now, I prefer, here's one other thing I would suggest. Do you guys think it would be better to use one of these finance companies or to do business with a local bank? Why? Probably rates are going to be cheaper. What else? What's the advantage of doing business local? Yeah, and I'm pumping money into that community, which keeps them hiring people, which then gives people money to spend at your business. Plus, they know that that bank has a interest in us succeeding because we are paying them interest on the money. So, the guy that bought me out, once again, I would have done it totally different, and he may have not had a choice, but he chose a financing company, one of these franchise financing companies, and he borrowed 100% of the money. So the only relationship he had with the local bank was depositing money and then transferring it out. And that's not, that's just not the relationship you want to have. And let me throw out one other thing too, and it's not this class. My managing growth, I have a commercial banker that comes in. But one of the things, if you guys deal with like Bank of America and Wells Fargo and these big banks, it is very depersonalized. They will plug you into a formula. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, they won't loan you money. There's no subjectivity at all in it. You want to, if possible, find a community bank, somebody that's small and is invested in the community, Capital City Bank, something like that, that's much smaller, much more community orientated. It's going to be much easier to deal with than some of the big banks. Now, what's the trade-off? Some of those big banks have a lot of technology and stuff that maybe, but although Capital City's pretty big right now, and I'm sure they have all the bells and whistles that come along with your account, but I strongly encourage you to look at a community bank versus one of the big banks, because those big banks just don't care. I mean, you guys, the amount of money I was borrowing to Wells Fargo, that's a small loan to them. All right, so you should help the franchisees by facilitating loans rather than loaning them money directly. Absolutely. If you want to be in the banking business, that's a whole different business model. I would not be in the banking business.
Wasn't your dad at one time?
Yeah. But he also got out. And you know what he told me towards the end of his time, why he got out? He said it's not fun anymore. He said, we are overregulated. He said, I know it. He was in a small town. He said, I know who's going to pay back the money and who's not. And yet I can't make loans because we are so overregulated that they won't let me do it. Yeah, and your examiners, because if somebody doesn't have X amount of collateral now, and it's the same thing, that my commercial banker now, he basically says you have to have the money sitting in the bank if they're going to loan you money. They take very little risk anymore after this whole market collapse back in 2000, 2007, 2008. Okay. Let me talk one other thing, just with your vendors that you use, and this goes to like the negotiating class I'm teaching. Don't be afraid to ask for stuff. When I did my pre-opening training, I'm sitting here looking at food costs. I'm having to buy burgers. I'm having to buy buns, Coke, all this stuff that I'm giving out. So I told my manager, I said, call the bun company, because once again, there was competition. We had 3 or 4 to choose from. And I said, call the bun company and see if they'll furnish us buns for training. She goes, they won't do that. I said, just make the call. She goes, they're not going to do it. I go, look, just call them. She calls them, and she goes, they said they're happy to do that. They parked a truck out back with day-old buns, because they can't, it's a different market, but they're still very, very good. And so all my buns for my training were free. So don't be afraid to ask your vendor. And I know when my third store that I closed down was getting, we could see that things were trending really bad. I called all of my vendors and asked them for some, kind of help. And I went back and we ran a big sale and tried to really jumpstart business. And all of them were very, gave us stuff. Why? Because what happens if we close that restaurant? They lose their business. So those guys, your vendors are your partners because you're an outlet to serve their goods. So don't be afraid to try to negotiate with your vendors deals, especially if times are really tight. They don't want you to go out. All right, so big thing, 4 types of support: training, ongoing support, real estate, and financing. And once again, in the financing, pretty much all they're going to do is hook you up with somebody who finances for a living. Most companies are not going to finance. So the services are means of adding value. And key strategic decision is how much to support to the offer, and as you grow, then you certainly can afford more. But once again, go back to McDonald's. Why do they want existing franchisees to open stores instead of new people? Because those people require less assistance from corporate to open a store because they've already got it. They will bring their people in, and corporate has a lot less responsibility if you're dealing with an ongoing franchisee versus bringing in a new person. Okay. All right. Very good. See you guys on Tuesday.